Welcome to Inspired Changemakers, a podcast about all the amazing things people are doing to make the world a better place. This podcast is about creating change and the moments that inspired our guests to activate. My name is Julia Healey, and I'm the CEO of United Charitable. Stay tuned to be inspired. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have you here, mostly because when I was on your podcast, it really inspired me to start this podcast.
Wow, thank you.
And I have been enjoying doing this podcast, Inspired Changemakers, for about 2 years now. So I'm really
great.
Isn't that amazing?
That's
Excellent.
great.
Congratulations.
So Sheila, welcome.
Thank you.
Baerenz, Sheila Baerenz,
okay.
welcome to the podcast. You have your Bachelor of Arts from University of Virginia
I do.
and a Master of Education
Yes.
in counseling.
In counseling.
Oh, I can't wait to figure out why that was the chosen.
Okay.
You have worked to establish AOG Wealth Management, and now you work part-time on special projects.
Yes.
And you also host a podcast called
co-host.
Co-host a podcast called 27 Minutes with Sheila and Wayne. And Dr. Applewhite.
Ooh. Who's that?
Yeah, right? Welcome to the podcast as well. You are the co-founder of a leadership development firm, and you hold a Doctor of Management degree. You have over 35 years in fellowship and leadership experience, and you have served as the Associate Dean and Professor for the Director of Graduate Military Programs, Commander, COO, and more. What's that and more? And you are the co-host of 27 Minutes with Sheila and Wayne.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yay. We're glad to be here.
So tell me a little bit about what really led to you wanting to get your Master of Education in Counseling.
You know, I always knew I wanted to be in some version a psychologist. And it just from the earliest I can remember. And I was the fourth out of 5 kids. And I told my younger sister about that once. And she said, you should be a psychologist. You are as boring as Bob Newhart. Which was a TV show at the time, for those who don't recognize that name. He was a psychologist. So, yeah. So I got a lot of affirmation.
And then, so tell me a little bit about why management and a doctor in management.
Oh, easy, because I grew up as you said, I was a follower and a leader, 35 years of that experience. But every place I've touched, every place I went, I get to see different people. I've been in the food industry, I've been in the medical industry, I've been in the intelligence industry, I've been in the military, I've been in, you name it, I've done it. And I found that all industries, I don't care what it is, there's 3 limiting factors: people, time, and money.
Right.
And if you don't understand people, time, and money, you're toast. I got to see and witness good management, bad management, in all of those avenues that I told you about. And I said, if I'm going to do anything in this world, it's going to be the best leader that I can when I have that opportunity.
It's so where were you born and raised?
I was born in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever met anybody from South Dakota.
I know. They don't stay there.
No. I was raised in Compton, California.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Was your dad military?
My dad, my biological father was military, yes. My mom and he separated before we left South Dakota. So I grew up with a person that I call my dad in Compton.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. How old were you when you moved?
I think my mom said I was a year and a half.
Okay. So you don't remember much of...
No.
So you claim being like you're a Compton person. Like
I'm a
that's
Compton person,
okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how much do you think that area had to do with your view of leadership?
Everything, because witnessing all the things that were going on around me back when there was the Watts riots and back when there was all this tumultuous kinds of times with all the gangs that were springing up and had been sprung up. Golly, it was an incredible time. I got to witness a lot of things, and I saw some things that I didn't understand. And I would talk to my dad about them, and he'd go, get out of here. You know, kids are supposed to be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Go to the other room. And that's the father I grew up with, a very stern. But looking at that, when I joined the military, that was the best thing that happened to me, because I got to leave Compton and I got to see the rest of the world, and I found out all the myths and tales that I had been told were simply not true.
Wow. I could not imagine being interested in leadership pretty much your whole life, then being able to join the military to see that leadership style.
Yes.
And how different people connected with that must have been a really wonderful lesson.
It was. I met so many creative and innovative individuals in the military that I just thought, wow, this is pretty cool. This is really, individuals were great.
Right.
There's bad everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay?
Of course.
And there's bad in the military.
Except
not here.
Yeah.
Except for here.
Right. Yeah.
And there's bad in the military, but there's so much good in the military. And all these things that I hear newscasters or celebrities say about the military is just totally not true.
It's so my last podcast, I actually had a Marine on here, and he's an adaptive athlete, and he talks a lot about the military too. So really, it's just amazing to see the different leadership styles that you must have been, I guess, you got to study, right? In a way that like, that's what we use our life to do, is to study things. And so did that really kind of forge you to really want to learn more about management and get your doctorate in that? Or what was the catalyst that you were like, I think I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to study team functions and management and how leaders can thrive?
Okay. I got my undergrad because I wanted my mom to see, she had passed away, but I wanted her to see that I could do something with myself.
Okay. What is your undergraduate in?
It's in business
Administration.
Yeah. I got my master's because the military wanted you to have a master's degree.
Okay.
I got my doctorate because I wanted to go to school for myself. And what did I think I knew about? I thought I knew a little bit about management and leadership. So I jumped into a program that was a doctorate in management.
Yeah.
Because I thought I could thrive there. And what was I woefully mistaken?
Oh, no.
I learned so much from everyone around me, the professors, the books, my classmates, and leadership to me, like you said, boom, my mind exploded because it was just so much more than what I had seen. And I had seen a lot, but doing that was just fun. So it was nothing that led me to go. It was just because I wanted to get a degree for myself. And what was that? Okay, hey, I'm going to jump into this program right now.
I'd like to thank United Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. United Charitable is a national nonprofit that focuses on guiding you on your charitable journey. Whether you like to simply streamline your giving or you like to create your own charitable initiative, United Charitable has the knowledge and resources to support you. If you'd like to learn more, check out the link in our bio. That's really funny to me because then you're like, hey, I'm going to start a wealth management firm with my husband. Let me work with my husband to help. So what was the catalyst that made that happen?
The job that I had for about 10 years before I met my husband was I was an investigator for the prosecuting attorney's office and a counselor in the school system in Idaho, a small town in Idaho. And so part of what I investigated was child abuse complaints. And you have to, I don't think anybody can do that for a long time without losing a sense of perspective.
Right.
Because you want to be on the narrow line of open-hearted and forensic-minded. And so, and you want every interaction to be helpful for the child, regardless of what the ultimate outcome is of the investigation.
Right.
So I thought I wanted to do something light. And I had previously been involved in an investment group where people would get together and talk about price earnings ratios and things like that.
Let's go.
And everybody vote on what stocks we would purchase. So I actually had been widowed and moved back to Virginia. And that's when I met Fred, who was a financial advisor and was kind of leaving one program and getting started in another. So I thought, well, of course, there's no one dying. There's no one getting beaten up in this. Seemed like a lighter touch.
So I have been working with AOG for should I?
Now it's FLP. That's right, FL Putnam. Right.
So do we say FLP or does it?
You can say both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah.
And it is you really teach people about their finances and how to spend money without feeling guilt, right? Because money is just such a weird subject where it's like, even if you have the money and you spend it, you can feel guilt. You feel guilty for not investing in it, like in all of the things that you So how have you really helped I think what's been really interesting for me at least is that you really have taught your clients
That was a real value that we had. We wanted to make people's lives better, including our staff members. And so, Fred and I were talking because we have just gone through this transition. And a lot of financial advisors would never tell their staff members what their income was or anything, because they would get greedy, quote unquote.
Right.
But we thought if we rise up, it's because of the efforts of the people we work with too.
Right.
And so everybody should rise up together. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And it feels really good to have hit the point where now that can be passed on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then how did you two meet?
You were in charge of Leadership Fairfax, and that's where you met Fred.
I was not in charge of Leadership Fairfax. I was a presenter for Leadership Fairfax.
Okay.
Okay.
And I met Fred in, he was one of the class, he was a student in one of the classes that I did a presentation for.
Okay.
And a funny story, I met Fred then. We talked, we laughed, we had fun. And about 3 months later, you know how you get junk mail?
Yeah.
And you know how you stand next to the trash can and you throw your junk mail in the trash can?
Yeah.
I threw junk mail in the trash can, and I pulled back out of the trash can this thing that said Fred Baerenz on it. I said, I know him. What is this? So I opened it up. Anyway, I reached into the trash, got his brochure, went to one of their seminars, and that's where I met Sheila and Amanda the first time. Yes.
Yeah.
And the rest.
So basically, he met me while digging through the trash.
Yeah. I mean, that's just.
Yeah.
And then when did this idea for the podcast come?
Wayne had a podcast initially, and I used to listen to it and help be one of the feedback givers, and it was great. But it was also very challenging, if I recall.
It was tough. It was fun. And then after that podcast subsided, because I was doing a podcast, and I had met a person by the name of Jennifer Milius because of the podcast and the book, because I had written 2 children's books. She had written a couple children's books, and she was doing a podcast with another guy with the same publisher that I had.
Yeah.
I was doing the podcast, and I said to the publisher, hey, you should get all of us authors together so that we can kind of see who's doing what, because I don't want to step on somebody's toes.
Right.
Because I knew Jennifer was doing a podcast on leadership.
Right.
I was doing a podcast on leadership. And so he never would get us all together. So I reached out to Jennifer and said, hey, look, you're doing a podcast on leadership. What is your stick? What's your theme? What's your structure? What's your process?
Yeah.
So that we don't, compete, because this is not a competing thing. There's enough for everybody.
Right.
And so she said, oh, this is what I'm doing. So I had her on my show a couple of times. She had me on her show. And I said, we should write a book, because she had similar ideas like I did.
Yeah.
And I said, we should put a book together about leadership.
And is that where this book, it's a verb, right, came?
That's exactly where it came from, yes. So I stopped the podcast. She stopped her podcast. I quit teaching. I was teaching for Boston University.
Oh, wow.
And we quit, and we spent 4 years on that puppy, and it was really fun doing that.
What made you actually want to jump in the I'm going to be an author pool?
Well, I had been an author before.
Okay. The
And
children's book, right? Okay.
Children's book, and I had wrote another book.
Okay.
All besides that, another nonfiction book.
Oh, wow.
But
Okay.
I was teaching leadership. I was teaching leadership and project management for Boston University. And I said, you know what? I'm enjoying the teaching of leadership. However, there are people who look like me, and there are people who look like Jennifer. I'm pointing to Sheila here.
Right.
That don't get the mentorship, that don't get that kind of, arm around the shoulder. Hey, this is how you should really lead people, or this is how you should follow first and become a leader. Other people would get that, but some people who look like me and some people look like Sheila did not, or Jennifer did not. And so we wrote that book for them.
So I think it's very interesting, because when we start thinking about leadership or being a leader as a kid, right, we think it looks a certain way. I thought a leader was somebody that got up on a stage. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And gave the speech.
Yes.
And then everybody was so inspired by the speech that everything was done.
Yes.
That's honestly, when I was younger, what I thought of leadership.
Okay.
Isn't that the most interesting thing? But when you realize it, and I said, anybody that wants to read a book on leadership, this is great because it is not this it's not this heavy drip, right? It's not this, you have to have this perfect morning. You know what I mean? It's not, it's a really great insight into leadership and how to start thinking about leadership.
Thank you. I will tell Jennifer.
But I think, right, as I've become a leader in my life and the CEO of United Charitable, it's been very interesting now how I study leadership, and listening has been probably one of the skills as a leader that I had to work on the most. So through your leadership journey, what is the skill that you had to work on the most?
Oh, listening was one.
Yeah.
And you have a door behind me, leaving my ego outside that door when I walked into the room. And the first thing I tell individuals about leadership, and I'm taking this from another individual, his name is D'Alessandro, who he had a trilogy of executive warfare, brand warfare, and I forget the other one, but he said, and it's so true, as a leader, one of the first things you need to learn is not everybody is going to love you.
You know, and it's so funny because I grew up in New Jersey, talking about where we grew up. Like, I grew up in New Jersey. So I actually already, knew that growing up in New Jersey, that not everybody was supposed to like you.
Right.
Like, you're just not everybody's cup of tea. But raising my daughters and my kids down here, that is something that we have to talk about quite often, is that if you make a decision, right, that feels good for you, that you can live with, but somebody else doesn't like it, doesn't mean we should change the decision.
Correct.
So have you ever had to deal with that in your life, with really having to stick by your principles even though it wasn't popular?
You know, I was also a military brat, and so we moved 7 times by the time I was 7. And so, but then
what was your favorite place?
Oh gosh, Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was young.
Okay.
Different place as an adult. But so I got in the habit of change on a regular basis, and I tell my husband I have to change my house or my job or my spouse every 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
So he gets that. So he threw a car in there to try to help stretch that out a little bit.
Because how long have you and Fred been together?
27 years.
So it's not been every 4 years for him. So
27 years. Wait, 27 minutes.
I know.
Oh my God, you should have an anniversary episode.
Yes, we should. We've had a few, but so I'm used to change and entering new environments, new cultures, and finding my place in there, and not losing who I am, because I like who I am, and so I like people who like me, and so finding them.
And it's interesting because I've also learned a lot about adaptability through leadership. And I also am my undergrad I'm an accountant by heart. I'll just say it. Right. So when I have a script, I think everything should go according to plan, and you solve the problem at the end. Your debits equal your credits, and the world is a very happy place. Leadership is not like that.
No.
You can't measure that your debits equal your credits, or it may, but it may take 2 years. Things don't happen instantly. What do you guys suggest for leading through, or what do you suggest of leading through those adverse times?
Oh my goodness, surround yourself with smart people who can help the other individuals get there. But it has to be a team that fits.
Right.
And yes. Sheila makes our podcast sound really good. She does. She brings a breadth of knowledge and information that I would never have imagined. And with it, she keeps us in balance. She keeps our balance sheet on an even keel during the podcast, because I'm out here laughing and being very light, and Sheila is the one who gives the white paper, if you will. Okay, here's all the factual kinds of things. Here's all the myth busters, and oh, by the way, this is going on as well. But having people to go out and coordinate or dance. I like to say dance. When was the last time you danced with one of your colleagues? To have that dance, because your colleagues know who is holding their end of the bargain and not. They should be putting pressure on the individual first before it comes to me. Because if it gets to me, then it's in a different ball game and everything's going to change. But if you can put pressure on me to make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that's going to generate much more positive than if I jump in and say, okay, Wayne, you're not doing your job.
Right.
And we need to talk about that, because all of a sudden now Wayne's on the defensive.
Right.
Can I interject too, having helped grow a small business into a bit of a larger business?
A bit of a larger business. Did you like how humble she was there? Go ahead.
A lot of people, especially in that environment, think of leadership as something you do on the side as opposed to a significant portion of the job.
Correct.
And so it can be done that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a wonderful example of how I love your leadership, and you probably didn't even register in this situation. We, it was early last year, maybe about a year ago, happened to be at the same conference in Savannah for a wealth management firm.
That was fun.
It was my first time presenting, and I was presenting into family offices, and I felt a little out of my league. Let's be honest. I struggle a lot with, for people that listen to the podcast, I've said this a million times, I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome because I think CEOs should look and talk and be a certain way. And sometimes I don't live up to that picture that I have in my head. And I remember I was signing and I didn't want, you know how talk about introverted versus extroverted. I am extroverted and introverted all at the same time. It's very,
many of us are.
Yeah, very weird. And they had a bus tour that we were going to go on. And this is a chance. And we're here with a lot of family office people that have had just amazing lives and access to things. And here I am, the little nonprofit that's like, hey, I'm good. Not little, but we are the nonprofit that's like, hey, listen, I really want you to consider philanthropy in your wealth journey. And I think it's important. And here's why. And I don't know if you remember, but I was on that bus and I was teetering whether or not I was actually going to get on the bus. And you said, come sit with me.
Oh, nice. I'm glad you did.
Right. And we then spent the whole time on a bus tour around Savannah talking about our lives, talking about our families, talking about what's important. And it was so interesting because I was like, oh, I do fit in here. Yeah. And so I love how for me, that was just an example of leadership to me, just because you were making me feel very comfortable in this situation. My presentation was the next day. I killed it. I did so good.
Yes.
But it's all those things where it's you don't need to be a formal leader with the position manager to help lead somebody to make them feel comfortable or worthy in a situation. And I think that's very important. So I honor that.
You mentioned the book.
Yeah.
And Jennifer and I wrote the book because we want to establish self-efficacy. Sheila and I talk about that. At least I do.
Yeah.
We talk about that on the podcast a lot. But self-efficacy is that confidence in yourself that you can do something. That book has nothing new in it for you. You already knew all those things.
But not like this.
But it goes deep, yet simplistically.
Yeah.
Because we want to build that person's self-efficacy, because they can say, oh, I already know that. But as they get to the end of the chapters, each chapter has a end of chapter honesty check. If you read and answer those questions today, 6 months passes and you've kind of started doing your leadership practice, come back and read those questions and answer them again. They will change.
So let them. Sorry, you can hear the Jersey accent. I said, let them.
Go for it.
Let them was a very interesting chapter to me.
Why'd you like it?
Because I am very type A personality.
Yes.
And I think it's that reality check where you don't need to be involved. Let them.
Yes.
And I think that's, to be reminded of that is checking your ego at the door. You don't need to be involved in every decision making. It's you have to let people thrive. You have to let them make their own mistakes.
Yes.
You have to let them make mistakes and then learn from their mistakes.
Yes.
You have to deal with their learning curve of how they learn from their mistakes, how they might not pick up the same things that you would have picked up. And you have to let them go through their own experiences.
Yes.
I would like to thank Athletes Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers Podcast. Athletes Charitable offers a concierge membership service that provides the tools and resources to build a legacy through service. Our athlete-led team has the first-hand experience and expertise to provide hands-on support that simplifies the entire process for athletes and entertainers to reach their social entrepreneurship goals and create lasting impact in their communities. To learn more, check out the link in the bio.
Riding a bicycle, teaching my son how to ride a bicycle. My wife was constantly holding the seat. I said, let it go. He needs to fall.
Right.
don't let him fall and hurt himself catastrophically,
Right.
but let him fall.
Right.
He will get up, we'll go dust him off, put him back on that bike, and he will have learned from that.
Right.
That's what leadership is. Leadership is you have to let the team fail.
And that's hard when you are the mission-focused person
Right.
who needs
Absolutely.
to get the results.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not
Yeah.
talking about letting them fail,
Catastrophically,
again,
right.
catastrophically. However, if you see little bumps in the road that
Yeah.
are coming and they can't see it, you can offer suggestions as to how to navigate around that. And if they don't want to listen, pull back and let it go.
And sometimes you can learn new ways of doing things from the ideas that they come up with.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Like
And when they fail,
Yeah.
the first rule that Jennifer and I talk about is do not point fingers and do not lay blame.
Right.
Because if you do that, that puts them on the defensive.
right.
When they fail, ask them what happened. Because they're just as much in this as you are. Nobody wants to fail, and everybody wants to correct it. If you put them on the defense, they don't want to correct anymore. They want to just protect themselves. If you say, "Go, how can we make this better?"
Yeah.
They want to make it successful.
So I think of this, sorry, but I think of this because I think it's incredibly important is that I'll listen to this clip again because as a parent,
I was just going to say that.
it is, my parents let me fail a lot and they let me try a lot of different things. My mom's like, okay, let's see if we like this. If we don't, if we try, if we don't, like it was never not doing well at something or not enjoying something or not doing it right the first time was never like bad in my household.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's a teacher. My dad was a teacher as well. And then he ended up being an actuary. But so I always just tried things because
Sure.
if I failed, okay, I'll learn from it. I'll learn what I like. I learn what I don't like. I'll learn something from it and I'll just move on. Like it was never devastating to me.
Okay?
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I also had to try out for things. So my parents were very like, you need to be rejected at an early, like you need to
Right.
understand that this is what life is.
Exactly.
Right. So, and if you don't try out for things, then you will never be rejected, that you won't know. So it was really always important to me. I was on, competition dancing, all the things that you could be part of. And I think right now in what I'm seeing within my workforce and my students and all of the things, people are afraid to fail. Mm-hmm. It's paralyzing. Mm-hmm. Do you guys see that too?
In
Certainly.
this younger generation, there's such
Yes.
a pressure. Yeah.
Yes. But you have to nudge them
Yeah.
because you can't sit still, can't be static.
Yeah.
So you have to nudge them.
And it was funny because I think we didn't do something the way that at United Charitable we didn't do something the way that we thought it should have been done. So technically it would have been a failure, but something so amazing, an amazing idea came out of it that led to an amazing amount of things that
Cool.
you're like, oh, that's exactly why failure is there. So you can learn from it and something better's around the corner.
And that's a great lesson for a leader too, because you do get laser focused sometimes, and to be able to let go and embrace different.
Yeah.
is so important. How cool.
And so now you have this podcast. And
Right.
so tell me about the podcast.
We pick a verb each week.
Okay.
We've got 3 rules.
Okay.
We don't, 4 really. We don't talk to each other about the verb at all until we're actually recording.
Ooh.
Yeah. Sometimes we have found ourselves looking at the same reference sources. Maybe once.
Yes.
No cursing, no politics, no religion, although spiritual
Yeah.
opinions are okay. Because we don't want to be disrespectful to anybody who's trying to listen and
Right.
learn or be entertained.
And there's a lot of podcasts that are out there that are political. We don't
Yeah.
need to go down that route.
That
So,
category's taken.
do you
Yes.
have a favorite word or a favorite person, or what has been your favorite episode of the podcast, and what word?
The next one.
Really? What is your next one?
Can't talk
tell-
about it.
Can't talk about it.
What was your last one?
Our last one was increase.
Yes.
Oh, increase.
Yes. Now, I got to say, sometimes
That is a verb, I guess.
Sometimes we'll get excited about a verb and then we won't be excited about it when we're researching it. But then sometimes a twist happens and we get excited, or the other person's enthusiasm will
Yeah.
stir us up.
So you guys probably don't remember what my verb was, but I remember it very clearly.
Okay.
It was impact. Yeah.
Yes.
And I chose impact just because of what we do here at United Charitable
Right.
and kind of really, I think, impact and as a teacher, like all the things. What was interesting to me when I was on your podcast is that I never thought about impact as actually like a hammer hitting a nail, like
Okay.
the impact,
Oh.
right?
Yes.
I always thought of it in such a positive,
Right.
empowering word. But then I was like, oh, and I was reading, I was preparing, right? And I was reading, and it was like an impact of when he hit her. I was like, oh my God, impact can be used that way too.
Yes.
Is there any word that really surprised you on your podcast that you were like, wow, this went different than I thought it was going to go?
There was a word that a friend of mine asked us to do. It was marinate.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one
Because she
too.
said, because Wayne, I marinate on things a lot, and a lot of people do. And I was thinking when she was talking to me, I said, I've never used marinate in that word.
Yeah.
I've heard of thinking
Yeah.
and thinking things through in a thought process.
Yeah.
But I never marinated. But I did noodle on things.
Noodle. Okay.
Okay. But
Yeah.
I never marinated.
So noodle's a verb. Okay, good to know.
Next one.
And as we did marinate, we found that in our dictionaries in America, marinate is not a word to be used in that
As
thought
to think
process.
it, yeah.
Right.
And we have a follower in Germany. Her name is Petra. And Petra wrote me an email that says, Wayne, in our country, marinate is only about food. What is this marinating thing
Yeah.
in your mind? She says, I don't understand that. And I thought, yeah, it's different. So it surprised me that I couldn't find the reference that the young lady that asked us to do it. I couldn't find her reference in any of the material that we had, but I did see some things where people say, oh yeah, we marinate on this, but marinate is not a word that we typically use for thinking.
So we feel like we're on the cutting edge of changing language.
Yeah.
Actually, I just exaggerated.
We're
that
trying to
little
make
bit.
a positive difference one verb at a
That
time.
is
One
our
verb at a
mission.
time.
That's right. That's right.
Well, that I think it's really, because words are very powerful and
Yes.
how you use your words.
Yes.
And your language, right, is very powerful, especially when you're leading or talk in any situation, right?
Yes.
Whether you're with your partner, your children, in the workforce. So what made you guys decide to dissect a word was the thing that you wanted to do?
I give credit to Wayne,
Okay.
in part because of the
The
book
book.
there from my perspective.
Right.
So
We said, I when I talked to Sheila about doing this
Yeah.
with me, I said, and I would like to use the book. I don't want to promote the book
Right.
because we've already done the book. That's
Separate.
gone. But I want the book to be an umbrella
Right.
of what we're doing in the podcast.
Yeah.
And verbs is underneath of that umbrella because, as you said, words can be so different.
So
I
different.
mean, if you because there's all right, if you can read a book,
Right.
READ.
Right.
You can also have read the book, which is
Right.
READ.
Right. Right.
And in the English language, that is why it is so troubling for other individuals to learn our language because we have the same word that means different things. Live and live, spelled
Right.
the same way.
Right.
But how do you pronounce it?
Right.
Lead, LEAD.
Yeah. And lead.
Like the
Yeah.
like the mineral.
Right.
And lead,
Right.
LEAD.
Right.
Like in leadership.
Yeah.
But lead, LED, as in leading.
It's just, no. And I think the other thing that I thought is really interesting about just words in general is we have bias. Like I have bias
we do.
Yes.
Yes.
towards certain words
Yes.
that, or if a certain word is said, I literally get frozen. So like so the word disappointed cannot be anywhere in my vicinity of life.
Okay.
Okay.
When my mother said it to me when I was a child, it froze me. So if I meet anything, or even like my husband had to take it out of his language because it would just like paralyze me because I didn't, but we all have that. We all
Yes.
have some type of attachment to a word. Like I say you rock all the time. It is my favorite. But it's not popular in today's day and age, whatever. But
Keep it going there. Yes.
But we all have words that we kind of live by and ascribe to. So the other coolest thing about your podcast is you let your guest pick the word.
Absolutely. And our job is to make our guest feel good and look good.
Yeah.
Or sound good.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, was there any word that they've come to you with that you were like, no, we can't do that one?
I don't think we've had a guest bring a word that we can't do.
We have never had a guest bring a word that we said no to.
Because it's about them and their choice, and so that's going to be interesting. But we have had words that we haven't been thrilled with.
We have had words from guests, and it wasn't a verb.
Oh,
that's right. So we have to
It was a noun,
that.
so we had to go back and say, can we change that because that's a noun, that's not a verb.
Right.
And one of our listeners, and she always puts a thumb on our website, which is very, very cool, and I thank her for that every time I talk to her. She said that, hey, she goes, hey, dude. She says, when you were talking about the past participle, she said, oh my gosh, I want to just hang myself because I was thinking about the dangling participles that I was learning in school.
No idea
English,
even what you're talking about anymore.
I
That's
don't
so
either.
sad.
She said,
Yeah.
it just went right over my head, and I'm thinking, yes, okay. But yeah, so we've had people where we had to say, that's a noun, not a verb.
And sometimes we find ourselves, or at least I find myself, going down the noun path instead of the verb path.
Right.
But it's a different word, and it's a different meaning.
Right.
So, yeah.
And why are verb? Sorry.
I'm sorry, and I was going to say, and we have had words because I have an empty gelato jar.
Right.
Okay.
And she just got a sheet of paper
That I spin.
that she spins and picks the verb. Because if you look at that book, those are all verbs in the background. And so I had 160 verbs that we gave the illustrator to take from, and so that's where we started with our verbiage. But we have picked words that we didn't like, but we
Right.
have never said,
Right.
no, let's don't do that one.
Our rule
Because
Can you
is-
give me an example, or you're not going to?
We're always thinking about the next one and not so much
Yes, and
thinking
that's
about the last one.
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but it's a challenge, and so we both like challenges, and we said we're going with it.
So tell me why you think verbs are better than nouns or prepositions, or why the verb?
I don't think they're better. I think
Okay.
they're used in an appropriate way. A verb is an action word.
Correct.
And leadership, to lead, which is why Jennifer and I wrote that book, is an action verb.
So you said, so I think what I'm really getting at here is that on this podcast, we really want people to be inspired to change, whether it's change themselves, change the world, change their circumstances. Why are verbs needed to help create change?
Because in my leadership practice, I was not there to, as I said in chapter 30 on the definition of leadership, I think one of the last things I said was, I'm not a leader to change you. I'm there to help you prepare yourself so that you can change.
Dive into that just a little bit deeper.
I am there to show you what's capable. You are there to match your potential with that capability, because this is where we want to go. You could take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
I can push somebody so far, they have to want to be pushed.
Right.
And I can push you so far and get you there to the brink where you can look over and you can say, hey, I see something different. Well, what do you see? I see this. Well, how can we incorporate that to get us to where I want us to go? And because the vision is the vision.
Right.
And the vision changes. A lot of people don't realize that the vision can change, because as you reach that point, you got to start looking for the next thing.
That's the hardest part, because you go, when I achieve this,
Yes.
I will be X, Y, or Z, happy, whatever word you want to fulfilled.
Does it really work that way?
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And, and I've had the luxury of having a ton of leaders that I respect in my life that I've got to learn from. And their ability to change and learn has been now a quality that I admire more than I did when I was younger. Have either one of you had a leader in your life that just really inspired you?
Oh, yes. J.J. James. J.J. James, best leader I ever had.
Military. Where was?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
He was the best leader that I have ever had.
Why?
He taught me so many things. He was the one who taught me. He says, my nickname is Apple. Apple, the best job that you will ever have is the one that you're doing right now. And I said, okay, can you elaborate on that? He says, because the best job that you're doing right now, other people will see you doing that job. And they will say, hey, this guy, this lady has some chutzpah. and some exciting things, and there's a lot of potential there. I can take that individual, put them in my spaces, and we can thrive much better than what we're doing. And he says a lot of people look for the next job that they want while they're in this job.
Right.
He said, stop doing that.
Right.
Do the best you can here.
Yeah.
People will take notice of you if they are worth their weight in gold. And if you have a boss who's worth his or her weight in gold, they will
Take notice.
take notice and push you in a direction that you may not even know that you had the potential to get to.
Okay.
J.J. James, that's just one thing he taught me. Just so cool, and he's so true. I've got many jobs because of that.
Mentality. Yeah. That life lesson. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Yes. I got plucked out of one career into another career.
Yeah, but I think that that's sometimes what I struggle with, just in not so much professionally, but personally in life. Like I always look, and the grass is always greener.
Okay.
And sometimes I have to sit there and write down all the blessings that I have, everything, right? All the things. And the grass isn't always greener. And I have to remember that because you always think you could, at least I always think I could be a better mom.
Sure.
I always think I could have done more.
Sure.
I always think my house could be better. It could be
Mine
decorated, cleaner. I mean,
All
laundry,
those,
right? All
yep.
the things.
Yep.
Like I'm one of those people, and so
Yes.
sometimes I just have to. And you talk about like just where you are right now. It's not going to matter if I keep saying, okay, well, when life comes down at United Charitable, I'll be a better, or when this happens, I'll be being present right in there and doing the best you can with the circumstances that you have.
Yes.
And just being present.
Yes.
So sometimes
That's a skill, though. That's hard. That's a hard skill to master.
Sometimes the verb is an action verb, and sometimes it's an embracing verb to be where
Explain.
you are. So we talked about why verbs, and talked a little bit about how that's what can propel people to take
Yeah.
ownership of their own change,
Yeah.
hopefully in a positive direction.
Right.
So sometimes the call to action is what inspires someone, but sometimes it's just being in the moment, a being verb as opposed to a doing verb.
Right.
Yeah. And that's where
so
you find your
true.
growth. Yeah.
And being able to sit. So some of you may know, we've talked about this. I just had shoulder surgery 3 weeks ago. So today is the
You've
official.
been sitting.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, and I was actually talking to Hannibal, who works, VP of Development for United Charitable, and was a professional athlete. He went through many injuries, many surgeries, many PTs. I am not one that is good with, you're going to have 8 weeks of physical therapy. It's going to be 6 months before you can actually lift heavy weight again and put like barbells back up, like all the things. And this ability to sit and just go through the process, like just be on the journey.
It's hard for someone who's a change maker like you are. Yeah.
It's just being on the journey, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And I thought I guess at one point I thought leadership was a destination, not a journey. And then I didn't realize how much it was going to change throughout the years.
And as a leader, you'll find yourself sometimes being a follower again.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more to learn. We have to constantly change. We have to constantly, and Sheila and I have talked about this as well. I would always, when I would go out and talk to clients, talking to the executive suites and those kinds of individuals, I would say to them things of, you have to put yourself in someone else's shoes because you don't know where the shoe pitches for them. And be that change maker. Show them, set the example. Show them that you are still learning. And so once somebody asked me, all right, Dr. Applewhite, well, what have you done recently that's changed? I said, well, I'm learning how to fly helicopters.
It's true.
Are you really?
That was back in 2011. I learned how to fly a helicopter. I said I was being taught by somebody younger than me, somebody who didn't look like me, something I had no idea how to do, what I could do. And I learned from them, and I took the challenge, I took the risk. I understood insurance is not going to cover this if the helicopter goes down, and but I'm going to learn this because I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone to do something different.
Right.
And I got another leadership lesson from them.
It's so funny because I think in those most uncomfortable moments when we don't know what the outcome is going to be, having that faith that we're just going to do the best that we can right in that moment is kind of what gets us through all of it. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much.
Thank
This
you.
is really fun.
For being on the podcast today. Thank you for inspiring me to have my own podcast.
You're doing great. Yay.
And everyone check out the book. It's a verb, right? Do you like it? And also check out the podcast, 27 Minutes with Sheila and Wayne.
Thank you very
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you, Julia.
Find Inspired Changemakers on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and comment on all the awesome things you are doing to make this world a better place. Don't forget to subscribe.